This message is not referring to, but in memory of Yaakov Dov ben Reb Avrum ben Zion. Dear future generations, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that your mother was thrown out of school when she was 17 years old, and no other school within our community was willing to accept her. I'm sorry that your father was thrown out of yeshiva at the age of 14, and he had to hang out on the streets within our communities. I'm sorry that your mother didn't have understanding parents that were there for her when she was feeling empty, confused, and alone. And I'm sorry that your father had to roam the streets of his own community with no one looking in his direction. I'm sorry that your mother started smoking weed and popping pills at the age of 18. And I'm sorry that your father had abusive parents that only added to the pain and agony he was already suffering. I'm sorry that your mother was already cutting her own wrists by the age of 19. And I'm sorry that your father committed suicide at the age of 20. Now, before you go ahead and ask me, who exactly do you think you are? Or what exactly is it you're talking about? Let me ask you a different question. Do you have any idea how many teenagers we currently have struggling on the streets within our community? Do you have any idea how many teenage girls and guys are currently addicted to drugs within our communities? Do you have any idea how many girls and guys were thrown out of schools or yeshivas or not accepted in schools or yeshivas in the past 12 months in our community? Or do you have any idea how many alcoholics or sex addicts we currently have in our communities? Do you have any idea how many teenagers within our communities were sent to rehab in the past 12 to 24 months? You don't. So before you go ahead and ask me, who exactly do you think you are? Or what exactly it is I'm talking about? Ask yourself these questions. And just so you know, the answers are not pretty. Now, I'm not here to change this community, nor to fix its problems. What I am here for is very simple. To ask all the questions you're not asking. To ask all the questions you are so afraid to ask. To ask all the questions that deep inside, subconsciously, we know that we don't want answers. Those are the questions I'm here to ask. So dear future generations, I am sorry that your father or mother were molested by a rabbi, family member, teacher, principal, or neighbor. I'm sorry that your father or mother didn't get the proper treatment needed after the incident. I'm sorry that your father or mother was so afraid to come out with their story, knowing that they will have no support by their own family or their own community. I am sorry that the molesters were the ones turned into the victims, and the victims were the ones turned into the perpetrators. I'm sorry that your father or mother had to keep it all bottled up inside. And most of all, I'm sorry that they are not here for you now, when you need them most. Do you know how many molestation cases were opened this year and shut down right away? Do you know how many people on the streets need major therapy but are not getting it because the moistness they are in claim that the molestation never happened? Do you know how many teachers teach, rabbis preach, that have been accused of laying their hands on young children, yet they're still employed and trusted around kids? Do you have any idea? You don't. Since these things just don't happen in our community, do they? Do you have any idea how many suicides actually happened in the past 24 months in our community? I mean, besides reading the article in the news, does it even interest you? I'm sure it does, for a day or two, but then it vanishes all away, like it never happened, like his soul never disappeared from the face of the earth. But you know when it hits you most? When you feel it on your own blood, when it happens to your son, to your daughter, to your first cousin, to your niece, to your nephew. That's when all of a sudden your adrenaline kicks in. You take it upon yourself to do something. You get all emotional, and you don't ask me anymore what it is I'm talking about, because you already felt it a little too well. But for one moment, let's not talk about suicide. Let's talk about how many dead people walking we have roaming around our communities, internally bleeding like zombies, searching for a meaning, searching for a home, searching for someone to look at their direction, searching for someone to love them, searching for answers, answers that they will never get from anyone in this community. Because if you don't ask the questions, how do you expect to be able to answer them? We have dead, malnourished skeletons walking beside us every day, and all we do is stare at them as if you're in a museum from the 1940s. You call them OTD without even knowing the definition of the letters, because according to you, it's off the data. But according to them, it's off their parents' data, the data that caused them so much pain, off their community's data, the data that suffocates them. But my real question is, how dare you call them off the data when you don't even know what your own data stands for? Let's not even mention the fact that when there is someone out there that wants to help, someone that actually makes it his life's mission to save those innocent young souls, he gets badmouthed, looked down at in the community, and underfunded. And that's not because we have an economy recession. That's because those multi-millionaires will rather fund a multi-billion-dollar organization and get their names written all over the next $1 million shul they build than actually give money to a new yeshiva, a new school, a new program that opened up to help those kids at risk, to help those who need help most. And yes, those people know exactly who I'm talking about. People lately started saying, we need to start talking more openly about mental health issues. I strongly disagree with that. We don't need to start talking more openly about mental health issues. We need to start talking more openly about suicide. We need to start talking more openly about molestation. We need to start talking more openly about drug abuse and sex abuse and alcohol abuse. We don't need to start talking more openly about mental health issues. We need to start preventing mental health issues. We need to start training the parents in our community. We need to encourage victims of abuse to speak up. Don't get me wrong, we don't need you to change accordingly to the OTD community. But we need you to stop putting your children in a position that makes them hate Judaism. We need you to stop hitting your children physically and emotionally. We need to stop hurting them, because we all need a place called home. And if we don't provide it to them, they will go out there and they will find a new place called home. We need the next generation of parents to understand to today's society. We need to make sure they keep their children alive. Unlike the current generation that treats the kids that are different like chickens in a slaughterhouse. And that starts with every single father, every single mother, every aunt or uncle, every older brother or older sister that sees a relative, or even just someone they know, struggling, suffering, abused, not to speak up. Enough of the speaking up. Do something. We've been speaking up for so long, and look to where we've gotten. Dear future generations, I'm sorry, but we haven't gotten too far. Now before you go ahead and tell me that I'm just a Hasidish, uneducated 22-year-old kid that is angry at his own community, let me stop you right there. Me being angry at this community doesn't change anything I just said. Me being angry at this community doesn't turn anything I just said into a lie. And guess what? I don't need to be educated to see what's happening, or better yet, not happening in our community. I don't need to go to college to see the amount of dead teenagers walking we have on our streets. And I don't need a psychology degree to see the pain they are suffering in on the daily basis, caused by their own parents, by their own family members, by their own neighbors, and by their own rabbis in their own community. So I'm going to repeat myself and say, I'm not here to change this community, nor am I here to fix its problems. Because I can't do that myself, and you can't do it yourself. I need you, and you need me. We need each other. I'm just here to tell you exactly what you don't want to hear. I'm here to tell you exactly what you're so afraid to hear. Because maybe then, just maybe, you'll open your eyes and save one soul at a time. And always remember, before you point fingers, make sure your hands aren't dirty. Before you call them off the derech, make sure you know what your own derech stands for.